Welcome back to Capitol Tonight, a statewide look at politics. I'm Tim Boyne. We turn to Washington now, where Congress takes a closer look at the rising cost of a college education on Tuesday. It's part of an effort to improve the Pell Grant program. The program was created more than 50 years ago to help low-income students finish college. North Carolina Congresswoman Foxx chairs the House Subcommittee that held today's hearing. Our Washington Bureau reporter Jeff Bennett was at the hearing and joins us more from Washington with more on that. Jeff.
Hey, Tim, that hearing before the House Education Subcommittee was the 11th in a series. Members of Congress are considering legislative changes before they reauthorize the Higher Education Act. That's the law that governs financial aid. And today's hearing was focused entirely on Pell Grants. More than 9 million college students like these rely on Pell Grant money to pay for school. That's money the federal government gives needy college students, which doesn't have to be paid back. It's considered to be the cornerstone of federal student aid, but some worry the Pell Grant program could soon be tapped out.
Since the program guarantees aid to any student who meets the eligibility criteria, enrollment spikes threaten the Pell program's long-term fiscal viability.
Some 70% of Pell recipients now receive the maximum award, a little over $5,600, which doesn't go nearly as far as it used to.
It now only covers about 35% of the cost of attendance at a four-year public school.
Students still have unmet need of some $11,000 to pay for 1 year of higher education. And they're filling that unmet need with loans, with additional work, eating ramen noodles. The point is that these students are living on the edge.
The education experts who testified Tuesday had varying opinions on how to make the Pell Grant program more effective and fix its projected funding gap. They suggested simplifying the application process, tightening eligibility requirements, and holding colleges more accountable for the grant money.
But right now the rules are very loose. Once a student puts in 60% of a term, the school gets to keep 100% of the money.
And in a separate move Tuesday, the federal government said it would expand its oversight of companies that collect student loan payments, the company Sallie Mae being the biggest. It's a response to complaints from some borrowers about lost paperwork and processing errors. Others have had trouble making prepayments on their loans, a federal student loan debt that now tops $1 trillion.
Students who have the talent, desire, and drive to pursue post-secondary education should be able to do so without being hindered by inability to pay.
We heard some of the proposed solutions aimed at fixing the Pell Grant program, but what is contributing to that funding gap?
Right, so when the program started in the 70s, it served about 170,000 students, and now it serves over 9 million, as I mentioned in the piece. And recently, that surge has a lot to do with the recession driving people back to college to learn new skills to be viable in the workplace, and also changes by Washington lawmakers that allowed more students to get the maximum award. Now, their motivations were good. They wanted to have more low-income students to get a shot at college, but it had the unintended effect of drawing on the program, and there was a concern expressed today that the Pell Grant program has moved pretty far away from its original intent.
Well, the Pell Grant program was originally created for the traditional college student, but we understand what defines traditional may be changing.
Right, and Congresswoman Foxx actually, she wanted to come up with a new term for the non-traditional students. She started calling them contemporary students because non-traditional students make up 72% of those currently enrolled in college. They're people who are over the age of 24. They attend at less than a full-time status. They have dependents or kids of their own. And so now the Pell Grant program has the added stress of serving the young and the old. And older students oftentimes don't have the guidance they need to choose the right program, to even choose the right school. And so they oftentimes don't finish the program. So they're getting the funding, the Pell Grants, but they're not finishing school.
All right, one last question,
and that's
Jeff.
obviously a huge problem.
Yeah, most definitely. One last question. Washington is also focused on across-the-board spending cuts. We all know it as sequestration. Now, if this continues, what effect could that have on the availability of Pell Grants?
Well, the Pell Grants were protected from the first wave of sequestration, but the second wave, which we face in January, they're not protected from that. It's not clear what the Department of Education will choose to do. One of the people who testified today said that the Pell Grant program could effectively dry up and force low-income students to take out more loans. But we're waiting on the bipartisan budget conference to reach a deal by next Friday. Their deadline is December 13th, and there's talk brewing of a small-scale deal that could set the sequestration aside for maybe 2 years. But, you know, as we learned from the shutdown, things fall apart, talks fall apart. So we're all waiting to see what will happen. But at this point, you know, many Republicans and Democrats alike agree that the sequester, if it continues, will be bad for the country.
Well, just one of many issues Congress will be looking at come January, no doubt about that. Our Washington Bureau report.